Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host, Barrett McDonald, and I'm joined today by Niva Sabeshan. Niva is the CEO of Motryx. Niva, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you start everything off by telling us a little bit about who you are, what got you started on this entrepreneurial journey, and what your company does?
Yes, thanks, Barrett. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So, yes, my name is Niva. I'm the CEO at Motryx. We're based here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, but we are a company that services hospitals across the world, primarily Europe and the US. So, what we do is we provide quality control solutions for blood sample transport. So, if you've ever had blood work done and then your doctor calls you up and tells you that the results were inconclusive and they want you to go repeat the blood work so that the test can be processed. Often what happens was during the transportation from the point of collection, either the temperature was too high or it vibrated too much, so the results that the the clinicians in the lab, they can't disclose it because it's probably incorrect. So we've created these sensors that look exactly like blood vials. And based on the journey that it takes, it collects all of the information and it analyzes it and gives you a probability of, like, based on that journey, this is the probability of like those blood samples getting rejected. And then we tell the physicians in the hospitals like where and when it's happening so that they can work to like reduce rejection rates. So really we're trying to help out hospitals improve quality, but at the end of the day, make it easier for patients so that they're not having to get pricked again and they get their results faster and out the door quicker.
Absolutely. Well, that's commendable work, and your company's doing some great work. So, what would you say have been your biggest learnings as an employer since you began in business?
So, biggest learnings have probably been to not be afraid of making mistakes. I think if everyone knew what the answer was, there wouldn't be any problems. So, we're all trying to do our best and make decisions based on the information that you're given. And sometimes you don't have a lot of information and you just need to make a decision because not making a decision is a decision. So not being afraid of making mistakes, because I think at the end of the day, all opportunities are some things that you learn from, as cliche as that sounds. But it really is about, like, if you do have a mistake, to look back and be like, well, what happened? Where did it go wrong? And really assess the situation and see if like those things were within your control that you're able to change. And if you want to make those changes, or if it's beyond your control and like something you need to explore further. And I've seen this time and time and again because this product was created out of a need from a market. So we really had to we worked with 18 different hospitals across Europe to like build out what this product could look like. So we really needed to listen to them and be like, well, what do physicians want? What kind of decisions are they hoping to make? How do we make this scientific so that the things that we're giving physicians are actually accurate and they're able to trust the results that we give them. So really there was a lot of back and forth. We didn't get it right the first time and we didn't get it right the second time, but we kept going at it. But just not being afraid of failure, I think, was like one of the biggest things.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. And what would you say are some of the common misconceptions you've come across about running a business since you started on your journey?
I think one of the biggest things is that people think you're your own boss. So you get to, do whatever you want and you call the shots. But I think there's a lot of people when you are a business owner that you are responsible for. So I think that gives you even more to be, like, what's the word? Like, you have more that you have to provide for almost. Like, I worry about how my employees are doing, I worry about how my customers are doing, I worry about how my investors feel about like the progress that we're making as a company. And you're always holding yourself even more accountable, I think, than working a traditional job where, you know, you are one of the employees that go in, like you're not necessarily worrying about like, well, how does payroll look like a year from now? How do we have money for more R&D and like things like that? And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I've seen where people are like, oh, you get to like make your own hours and do whatever you want, but it's almost like you have more accountability because you have so much more responsibilities.
Yeah, there's never true windows of being able to 100% turn it off. It's always in the
Ever,
back of our minds, and it's
ever.
yeah,
Have you
it's
ever
great
taken a
responsibility.
vacation off and like turned off your phone? Because like 5 years in the business now, and I've still not been able to like do that and like completely disconnect.
There have definitely been times, and that's what we work on at Action Coach is making sure that you can get yourself to that level where
Yeah.
you've built the systems and practices in place where you can turn your phone off and
Yeah.
enjoy that true vacation and not just work from a different location.
Yeah. I'm
And
like, oh,
not,
this
it's
is
like,
relaxing.
yeah, I have my laptop on a beach instead of in an
Yeah,
office. This is so
exactly.
good.
No, I'm
Um,
definitely not there yet, but I'd love to get there one day.
Yeah, and I think that as I talk to people and work with folks, everyone's true sense of balance and what it means to have those things varies because it's very individualized on what's important to you and what you want, and especially at whatever stage of life you're at, because things are going to happen and things are going to change. So it makes it really, really interesting and a whole lot of fun. So while we're talking about balance, how do you try to create some balance between your work life and your personal life?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I like to think that I have good work-life balance. I definitely try to promote it at work around the culture that I build. Personally, I think there's like always room for improvement. However, I do try to get like my time off where I like go to the gym and just like not think about work or like any of my other responsibilities and just like focus on myself. And I try to do things like that throughout the day. But that also means that during the weekends when I should probably shut off, like I do take it onto my plate to just like, you know, just like get caught up on some things and like do some like alone time thinking where I'm not boggled down in emails or like people aren't pinging me through the day to like sit back and reflect and like decide like in terms of like where I want things to go. So I think for me, balance isn't like I try not to think about like work and my personal life and try to keep that separate always because I think it is part of like who I am. So I try to like make sure I get my fill because I do find a lot of joy from my work and I do find a lot of joy in my personal life. And that's what makes me happy. So I try to do a little bit of everything.
Absolutely, and that's tremendous. And you touched on trying to instill it in your culture. So when you're looking for your employees and the staff that you surround yourself with, what kind of qualities do you look for in them, and how do you foster that positive work environment?
So this was another learning curve that I've been through and then I had to like step back, examine why that relationship didn't work out with that certain employee. And then I realized quickly that a lot of people can be taught things. There's a lot of smart people out there, and every company does things differently. And the thing that you cannot teach people are their soft skills. So when they come on, it's their attitude. They do represent you and your company when you're out there talking to customers or other vendors. So you really do not want to settle on things like that just because you think, oh my God, look at their resume. They're so smart. They have all of this experience. But like if you don't see them fitting in, especially in our role, because we speak to a lot of smart people, there's not a lot of room for um cockiness, for a lack of a word, when it comes to salespeople. And that was something I had to learn in terms of hiring. So that was something that is like my non-negotiable now is like culturally, do they fit in with like what I'm trying to build in this company? And can I see them without me or without anyone else on the team, like representing my company and doing an accurate job of it. That's really like my non-negotiable. And then setting that culture, because with every new person that comes in, I want them to leave their mark on the company. But at the same time, I need to instill the culture that I want this company to have. So we've had a lot of like corporate people come in from large companies and they're so used to work being a certain way. And then I had to come in and tell them that, like, I respect people's hours. When they're off, they're off. And if we're doing things out of like work hours, because we deal with European hospitals and sometimes meetings are super early on in the morning, I'm like, I like to give them a couple of hours off because they're getting up early to like deal with stuff like that. But it was a huge learning curve for them because they came from years and years of that just being the norm. But
Right.
I'm like, you're as good as you are. Like, I don't want burnt out employees like doing work at the company. Like, that's not good for us. So make sure like everyone's cup is filled and that we do have a better work-life balance with people. Um, it's something that I've had to foster, and like people either pick it up or they don't. And if they don't adopt, like, we do not find success in those relationships. And it's okay to cut it off because I think that person needs a certain environment to thrive. And unfortunately, Motryx wasn't able to provide it. But we do have, like, the team that I do have right now, amazing, but had to go through a lot of learning curves to decide like what were those skills that made them stand out.
That's fantastic. And it's not a straight path on this journey. It's very, very windy.
If
And
only.
so, and sometimes you have to take 2 steps back to take 3 steps forward, right? In a lot
Exactly.
of ways. So what do you attribute your growth to?
I would say it's our ability to take feedback, whether it's good, but especially the bad. So we really need to be able to listen to the market if we want our product to succeed. And that was something we needed to learn, and take on that criticism and be like, all right, like, this wasn't working for these customers, so we need to go back to the drawing board. And it may be a lot of work to like reconfigure this whole thing from scratch, but we need to do it because otherwise it's like trying to, make a square fit into a circle. It's just not going to work. And I think that was really the success story behind Motryx, was the fact that we weren't afraid of like bad news. Like, bad news was great because I'm like, all right, like, that's another barrier to entry. We're aware of it. Fantastic. Now we can like go after it and like manage that risk. As opposed to, being blind by it or sticking your head in the sand and being like, it'll eventually go away. It never goes away. So
No, it only gets worse a lot of the time as well.
exactly.
So thinking about your journey over the last 5+ years, if you had to start all over again in business from square one, what would you do differently the next time around?
Um, this comes from experience. It's definitely trusting your gut. Uh, it does not lead you astray, even though sometimes you're in very uncomfortable situations where you're like everything says go this way, but then your gut's saying like this isn't the path for us at this point. But then you do it anyways because like everyone's like, yeah, that seems like where you need to be going. Um, I think trusting my gut was something I started doing much later on. Um, because you just know your business so much more than anyone else will. They have their own experiences, but you live and breathe this company and you just like understand things, especially when you're at a stage where you're just growing it because you're doing so much more than just your role. Like, you're doing everything for it. And all of that data is in the back of your mind and you're making decisions based on like everything that you do know. Whereas like some people come in and like they have good intentions, but they don't fully understand all of the nuances of things. And I think that was something that I had to learn to be like, feedback is great. Um, but sometimes you do need to make decisions based on your gut and just
Absolutely.
go for it.
That's some pretty sound advice. So last question, I promised you one off script. Is if you were watching at home or anyone watching at home who's thinking about going on an entrepreneurial journey, what's the one piece of advice you want to give?
This was something I had to think about 5 years ago, and I did a lot of soul searching myself before taking the plunge. Was just do it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And like 50 years from now, you never want to look back and think, what if? And that was my thing was, we can do this, it can fail, but I'm sure as hell learning a lot. And I can take that elsewhere and do another thing, or like go to a larger company and like bring value that way. But like, just I never wanted to wonder what if. So if you
Absolutely.
have something and you have the passion for it, just go for it. Like there's nothing stopping you.
That's amazing. Well, Neva, thank you so much for your time today. To
Thank
those of you
you.
watching at home, I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.
Thanks so much.